You're listening to The Rant.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
You're listening.
So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
You fucking crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that?
To The Rant.
I speak jive.
Oh, good.
I've been saying it. I've been saying it for 10 damn years. Ain't I been saying it, Miguel? Huh? I've been saying it.
You're listening to The Rant with David King.
Welcome to The Rant. I am your host, David King. It is good to be here with you on this Thursday, January 26th, on special episode number 5 for The Walking Dead. Part 5 of The Walking Dead special, that is. It is good to be here. Talking more Walking Dead. Just finished season 5 a few days ago. I'm excited to get in here and talk about it. So much to talk about. Let me fix my mic because my mic is coming apart. This is what happens when you're your own production studio, your own production staff, your own producer. When things fall apart, it's on you to fix it. Anyway, really happy to be here. As I said, we went over season 4 earlier. I think it was, when did I release that? Over the past week? Last week? Yes, it was last week. So much to this season. If you thought last season was just a big roller coaster ride of different storylines and different plots and different characters, experiencing something different, and you have this story over here and that story over there. Well, season 5 is very similar. Again, 15, I think, episodes, which is, again, is very, I guess I shouldn't say it's unheard of, but it is hard to do 15 episodes a season and keep each episode relevant, which I think in this season, you'll probably see that they kind of added some things in here that probably weren't necessary. So let's get into it. Season 4 ended with the group trapped in a train car at Terminus. So everyone arrived at Terminus. Some people got there before the others. That's kind of how they found out. It's how Rick figured out that something wasn't right. And they got chased into a train car. So they're all trapped there now in Terminus with their fate unknown. And so season 5 begins with a then sort of flashback that offers us a little backstory into the Terminus folks. It's pretty vague, but obviously something's bad is happening to them. And then it cuts to now. And shows the group inside the train car. They're turning belts into weapons and trying to find anything else they can to fight back. Rick, Darrel, Glen, and Bob are all pulled out of the train car and taken away. So they build up their weapons. They think they're going to get the upper hand on them when they come to get them out of there. But unfortunately, they toss a smoke grenade in there and they get them out. They take Rick, Darrel, Glen, and Bob, and they take them away. So this is where we learn about the true horrors of Terminus and who these people truly are. So we obviously know they're not good people because they're acting in bad behavior. They've shot at Rick and the group and kind of forced them into this train car and locked them up. So we know they're not good guys, but I don't think we quite know the extent of how bad they really are. But we're soon about to find out. To sum it up, basically, when we get in there, we kind of we're not sure as to what they really are, but we see them doing some pretty weird things to dead bodies. You may be able to put two and two together pretty quickly here, but you'll soon find out that these people are cannibals, and they are prepping Rick and the others for the butchers. So it's a pretty graphic scene here as we see a familiar face at the troth with Rick. So they line all these people up at this kind of drain trough thing. It's pretty awful. With Rick and the group being there, they kind of lean them over there. Their hands are tied and they're gagged. The young kid, he's the first in line, unfortunately, but he's the young kid that Rick and Carol came across in the past season in that little neighborhood who had the girlfriend who was unfortunately, she was taken out. And unfortunately for him, he's the first to be killed. And it's a really, really off graphic scene here. It's pretty clear there's not a lot of hope here as the Terminus butchers, as I call them, these two guys that are doing the work. I just call them the butchers, kind of make their way down the line. They're hitting these dudes over the head with a bat and then slicing their throats. This scene is brutal and also really sad. It's a pretty sad scene. I can imagine the horror and fear that these people are going through as they kind of get hit with a bat and their throats are cut. And what's worse is if you have to watch a few others, first knowing, watch these other folks go through it first, knowing that's going to be your fate very shortly. That can be a horrific thing. It's not certainly a way I would want to go. But as luck would have it, Garrett walks in just before Glenn gets the bat, and Bob tries to reason with him, but no luck. He allows Rick to talk because he wants to know where the bag of weapons are. And Rick proceeds to threaten him and tells him where they're at, but he tells him which weapon in the bag that he's personally going to kill Garrett with. Of course, Garrett finds this quite amusing, which of course anybody would, because Rick's tied up at a trough, getting ready to be killed. There's really nothing he can do. At least that's what they think. Rick has currently got a little piece of wood that he's trying to use to cut through plastic. Good luck. Again, it seems as if all hope is lost, but wouldn't you know it, just in the nick of time, there's a giant explosion. Lucky for Rick and especially Glenn, because he was certainly up on the batter's box there. Lucky for Rick because this buys him a little more time to break free. Garrett leaves the butchers to go to investigate, but they begin to panic. One tries to convince the other to leave and go investigate as well, while the other says that they need to get their job of butchering done. In other words, they need to finish up what they've started. They have numbers to meet. They got to get these bodies taken care of. They got to get them drained. Ugh, it's brutal. And the crazy thing about it's like how nonchalant they are about doing this. Like, you would think that it would be a hard thing to do, right? To do what these guys were doing, hitting a human over the head with a bat and slicing their throat, and then basically cutting them up and butchering them, like to eat. I can't personally understand it. I can't imagine doing that. But these dudes do it no problem. So it kind of gives you an idea of just how evil these people really are and how far gone they really are. And so the show eventually cuts away to Carol and Tyrese and gives us a little of their backstory. We found out the explosion is in fact Carol, and she's attempting to rescue the group because they heard the gunshots. Carol and Tyrese happened to be close enough to Terminus to see and hear the gunshots and the group being forced into the train car. And I actually think Carol witnessed Rick and Glen, Darrel, and Bob being pulled out of the train car, actually. Either way, it doesn't matter. She witnesses it, and so she sees, obviously, this is not a safe place to be, so she's got to get in there and rescue her group. And meanwhile, Tyrese hangs back with Rick's baby and a captured guy from the Terminus who's kind of a prick. And he tries to get into Tyrese's head. And it's interesting to note that he says to Tyrese, because he's going, what are we doing here, man? He's basically asking Tyrese, like, what are we doing? Are you going to just, if you're just going to kill me, kill me. Like, get this over with. I don't have time for this nonsense. And unfortunately, he basically tells the guy, like, look, nobody has to die here. We could fix this. And he pretty much said, like, look, bro, if you think he's like, if that's what you believe, you're the one who's going to die. You and your friends are going to die if that's what you think is going to happen here today. And so it's interesting to note that he tells him too, like, you're not the one who lives here because you save babies. And he's right. You know, this is the new world. It's, as I've spoke about over every episode so far. I don't think I need to beat it into the ground any longer. This is the new world. And it's hell and it's chaos. It's unkind and it's certainly not fair. You know, it is actively trying to kill you and punish you at every turn. It preys on the weak and makes monsters out of the brave. That is what this new world does. And it's a little bit of foreshadowing for Tyrese's character as far as, in my opinion. But needless to say, the guy kind of fools Tyrese into looking at something, or Tyrese turns his back. The guy gets up and kind of holds a little knife to Rick's baby's throat and threatens to kill the baby. And so Tyrese freaks out and literally beats the living shit out of this guy. And that's pretty much the end of that, or so we think. More on that later, of course. So we all assume, like, Tyrese just snaps and just beats the living hell out of this dude until he's dead. And quite frankly, from the sound of it, I'm pretty sure, like, homeboy's not getting up for a while. It literally sounded like this dude just pummeled his face in. Carol, though, manages to breach the compound along with a ton of walkers that she so cleverly led there, and she's very clever. She blends in with them. She kind of rubs the walker guts all over herself, and she kind of stumbles on in there with them and starts picking off the Terminus soldiers one by one without them really knowing it. At this point, it's basically pure chaos in Terminus. There's walkers everywhere. People are running and screaming. They're shooting. They're trying to get away. They're trying to clear them all out. It's pandemonium. Rick breaks free just in time. And of course, none of the main characters die in this scene, only the people we don't know or care about, and they manage to escape. Generally, I'm okay with this sort of scene because it had plenty of tension to it that made you believe maybe Glen was going to get the bat to the head and then the knife. But I will say this, anyone who's maybe thinking a little bit more about it or is paying a little more attention kind of understands how a show might execute a scene or what they would do with its characters or whatnot, or however you explain it. I will say that placing Bob at the very end of that troth was kind of a mistake on the writer's part or the director's part, whoever set up the scene. That was the wrong way to do it, because it literally tells us that no one here is probably going to die, right? It literally tells you that because Bob is at the very end, it's very likely that everyone's going to escape. Bob, love him or hate him, is a lesser character than, say, Glen, and certainly a lesser character than Rick and Darrel, right? And yet he's at the very end of the troth. So for most viewers, this scene setup would go unnoticed, but I picked up on it pretty quickly. I'm going, well, wait a minute. Look where Bob's at. Bob should have been placed where Glen was, and then it could have been Glen, Darrel, and Rick. Rick should have been at the very end. Not, or you would never put Rick as the first main character in that line of characters for sure, and you certainly wouldn't put Bob at the very end because we know the show won't kill off Rick, but the other characters are not necessarily safe, and we all will agree with that. And definitely not Bob. Bob is barely a B-list character at this point. He's got very little development. We don't know a whole lot about him. We just kind of know he was a little lost in his own way, a bit of an alcoholic trying to survive. But we don't really know much more about him, and there's not a whole lot of development there. We know he's a nice guy, right? He's kind of happy-go-lucky, whatever. And we kind of find that out really more after the fact than now. And so it's safe to say if Bob's right here and Glen's over here, it's like they're not going to take out Glen and keep Bob. There's no way. Glen is such a well-established character at this point. It would be very unusual to see him be taken out before someone like Bob. But anyway, I digress. We see Rick take out one of the butchers and then promptly the other. I like what Rick says here, which is after he kind of takes him out, he just goes, leave him, let him turn. In other words, they're not even good enough to put down completely. Let them roam this world as a walker. It's like almost like internal damnation. Just let them be. Let them turn to a walker. Screw them. They don't deserve to die fully. They don't deserve to fully die. And that's like a crazy thing to say. It's almost like putting somebody in purgatory, right? Like what's the worst thing you could do to your enemy? Well, the worst thing you could possibly do to your enemy is probably kill them, unless you could put them into purgatory. That would probably be the worst thing you could ever do to somebody. And I have to feel like being a walker would almost be like being stuck in purgatory. You're all alone, mindless, just wandering around being a vicious monster. We don't, of course, know if the person's dead and goes to heaven or hell in this show and comes back as a walker and it's just a body walking around. We really don't know those details, but I have to assume that person's probably still in there. That's how I look at it anyway. So the group fights their way out of Terminus and sees some of the horrors of that place, like the bodies on meat hooks. It's pretty awful. And that's when you get a really good kind of clear inclination. Like, dude, these people, I think are eating these people. Like they're hanging people up on meat hooks. The lesser mind may not still understand what was going on at that point, but when you see people getting cut up and sliced up and it looks like a butcher shop and instead of pigs hanging from hooks, it's freaking human bodies. You're like, whoa, dude, these people are messed up. It's pretty bad. And I will say this too. I really liked the casting of Garrett and the other Terminus folks, especially Garrett, moreover than anything. They're all very innocent looking people. When you look at Garrett's character, he would not strike fear in anyone at first glance. Like if you walked up on at Garrett anywhere, you'd probably be like, no big deal. This guy's just a regular everyday dude. He's not going to do nothing. Doesn't even look like he can hurt a fly. But the reality is he's a pretty evil dude. If I had to deal if I had to deal with him or the governor, I would probably pick the governor. Like that's how bad Garrett really is. Garrett is Garrett is literally a wolf in sheep's clothing, whereas the governor is just the wolf appealing to your senses, right? Sure, the wolf is lying and will probably kill you, but at least you know it's a wolf. And that's the danger of Garrett. Garrett looks like the guy that will serve you a double mocha latte with foam at a Starbucks, not a guy that's going to serve you up on a dinner plate. But that's who he is. He's freaking insane. It's interesting to note how the facial expressions too, and people change this season. And and especially in two main characters. Garrett's mother seems very harmless too. But when Carol has her on the ground and she's pleading her case, you can see the insanity in her eyes. It's actually quite well done. I don't know if it was intentional, but it did it right. While she's laying on the ground, kind of scolding Carol for, and explaining to her how they were tortured and blah, blah, blah. She looks insane. She goes from looking like an innocent woman to very, very much insane. The group. So anyway, I really like that. I love Garrett's character. All of those, the Terminus characters are actually very well done. They're not too over the top. I was thinking before we got into this scene, I was anticipating them to be over the top characters, much like Abraham and Eugene are. I was like, am I remembering these people right? Am I remembering this scene right? And actually, no. I actually think the whole everyone there, the whole idea of this place and who these people are, I think is very believable for the most part. I do have some things about their overall story, and I'll get to that here in just a second. But I generally have very few complaints about the Terminus scene. I liked it. I thought it was interesting. It's a different take, something you don't normally see in a zombie flick or any movie really. It was very violent, but it felt very real. It was very like these are people that you could come across in an apocalyptic event. So the group eventually escapes and meets back up in the woods where Rick buried the guns. Again, I generally have very few complaints about the Terminus scene. I thought it was very good. There was a little bit, there was a little bit of like perfect timing in some of the situations with Carol getting there in just the nick of time. This is where I would have put maybe, if you don't want to take Bob out because Bob's necessary for the future story, that's fine. But you may actually want to put up one of the characters, and this would be a scene where, well, we gotta kill somebody off because we don't want it to look too obvious that Carol gets there at just the right time to save the group, because that's basically what happened. You had all these people that we had no idea who they were. They all get nixed, and it sucks. And Glen's very close to being nicked, and of course Carol gets there just in the right amount of time. For some people, that could be a huge turnoff in terms of like, oh, of course, perfect timing. I didn't think I didn't see it as being as bad. I think it worked fine. It's okay. Maybe I would have done it a little bit differently. I would have wrote it a little bit differently, but it works. Hey, Glen's just a lucky dude for now anyway. So all in all, I like the Terminus scene. Yeah, the people there are a bit extreme. However, all the people of Terminus aren't exactly over the top characters, like I said before. They come across as genuinely normal individuals who just lost their minds after being attacked by another group. The story isn't too hard to believe. However, I will criticize it because I don't really know how you go from being really good people that takes everyone in to eating people all because of a group of really bad dudes beat your men up and raped your women. That's a weird kind of pivot, right? I get the idea of being untrustworthy, angry, bitter, and to the point where you just take everyone out that comes near you. Like, I can understand where you don't take anybody in anymore. You just shoot them. But eating people, I'm not sure that really lines up. Maybe I missed something during this season that Garrett explained why they just suddenly started eating people. I'm sure I did, but nonetheless, it's not unbelievable to think you would run into cannibals in an apocalyptic future. Like, I believe you would, because there's going to be people out there who they don't know how to hunt. They don't know how to feed themselves. They don't even know how to garden or anything, probably. And so they turn into cannibals. But I just think I just look at that arc, those character arcs, and I go, how do you go from being like, you told us, because you told Rick, we used to be good people. We used to take everybody in. We used to do, mother, maybe it was Garrett's mother who said that in the very early stages. We took everybody in. We were good people. And you're like, okay, then how the hell did you possibly get so far up your, like, screwed up in the head where now you're eating people? Like, you're tricking people into coming here and then killing them in a brutal fashion and eating them. Yeah, it's weird to me. I don't know if that's the way I would have written it, but that's the way they did. I maybe would have changed that. I may have tweaked. I would have probably changed their backstory a little bit, or not even explain their backstory. Like, why even bother? I understand that they were trying to maybe have you feel because the only reason why you would show the then scene where the men are getting beaten up and the women are being raped is you're trying to pull out some sympathy. You're trying to convey some sympathy for this group, or at least some understanding as to why they do the things that they do. But the problem is, it's like, no, it doesn't work here, because there is really no level of, there's nothing that could have happened to you as an individual for me to go, oh yeah, no, that's perfectly a rational decision to start eating human beings. It's a perfectly rational decision to now lure people to your facility and kill them and eat them. Like, that doesn't work. So I don't know why they did the then and now scene. I don't know why it even matters that we knew what their backstory was. We could have dealt without it. We didn't need to know about it. I was actually quite fine without. I would have loved to just had Garrett tell us, look, man, we were struggling to eat. And so, we made up a sacrifice and we realized this works. And so now we were getting pretty hungry there, and we started losing it. We said, we're not going to starve or whatever. I don't know, but I would not have, there's just no way, like, you can possibly, like, oh, well, their women were raped. So, I mean, it makes sense. No, not really. No. If the women never want to see a man ever again in their life, that makes perfect sense. If they don't ever want to be touched by a man, that makes perfect sense. If they want to run away and hide, that makes perfect sense. But eating someone, I don't know about that one. But anyway, that's all that. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it to death. Some things I didn't like. Some things I did like. But anyway, moving on. Terminus serves as, in my opinion, the breaking point for Rick. So this is like the pinnacle of it all. Like, you kind of really see the effect that it has really quickly, the effect it has on his psyche. And really no wonder. I mean, he and his group they've been through hell since leaving the rock quarry. And notice I did not say Herschel's farm. I said the quarry from season 1. The farm was a false sense of security, almost like a guy helping you up and then pushing only to push you back down as soon as he gets you up. They have literally been on the run and living in chaos since they've left that quarry. The quarry was a sense of false security as well. Not as much as the farm, but they were all camping out there. Things were going okay. They were cooking out. They were making do. And then it was overrun by walkers, and it put them on the run. And since then, it has literally been hell for Rick and his group. This world literally picks Rick up for a brief moment, only to slam him back down before he can ever catch his breath. That is his story. And that, to me, is almost worse than just surviving. If you are just living in the woods, moving from location to location, never standing still, always kind of, going house to house, street to street, much like they were before they found the prison. I almost feel like this situation's worse than that. Thinking you finally found a place to live and make a life and almost like you've made it, only to lose it. And for the record, he's lost that twice now. First the farm and then the prison. The quarry was never permanent. I think they were just kind of in a holding pattern there, because once it was gone, they're like, look, we need to get to Fort Benning, because they had always talked about going to Fort Benning. Rick said the CDC, so they went to the CDC. That didn't work out. So they've already lost 2 kind of paradises, if you will, or potential paradises, the farm and the prison, and they've been on the run ever since. So Rick's basically hanging on like a loose tooth at this point. And we see this promptly after Terminus. I mean, Terminus was literally the straw that broke the camel's back. Rick can't take it anymore. So later on, Rick and the group are kind of wandering about. They're watching over their shoulders because they don't know if the Terminus people escaped or who might have escaped or didn't escape. So they're a little bit on alert. And that's when they hear a man screaming off in the distance on a rock. And Rick and their group find him. He's quite an interesting character by the name of Gabriel. He's a priest. Go figure, this show is based in Georgia, the land of 1,000 Baptist churches, and they managed to find an Episcopal priest in the middle of nowhere, but whatever. Anyway, Gabriel is relieved. They saved him, of course, but Rick doesn't trust him because Rick doesn't trust anybody anymore, not after Terminus. It's a very clear indication that Rick is losing his faith in people, and for good reason. I mean, he almost got turned into a steak dinner, so I would probably have a little faith in people too. I also noticed over the next episodes as well, Rick appears to be less gentle and more like he's losing his mind. His beard is really big and raggedy. His eyes too, they look a bit intense at all times. I don't know if he intentionally did that as well, or it just kind of worked out that way. But I have to think they did. I think he was intentionally doing it. He looks so much different in this first half of season 5, especially like when he gets to Alexandria, which we'll talk about later on. His face changes. Like, I know he shaves his face, and that's kind of a representation of him renewing himself when he shaves his face, but his eyes look different too. And I'm wondering if he intentionally acted out that purposely. The reason why I say that is because Tom Hardy, if you don't know who Tom Hardy is, he's a fantastic actor. He worked with an acting coach on using his eyes more when acting. So in other words, kind of almost overdoing it with your expressions with your eyes. And he did this when he learned about all this while he was playing the part as Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. And the reason why he did this is because Tom had a mask on the entire time. So it would be difficult to read emotion while he spoke. You wouldn't really be able to get the full effect of his words, how he felt, what he was thinking, because his face was covered up. All you could see was his eyes. So with his training, he was able to amplify his eye and brow movements to make up for that. And it worked. It worked really, really well. If you ever go back and watch The Dark Knight Rises, which is a great movie. Is it a perfect plot and story? No. And we could poke holes in it all day, but it's still a very entertaining movie. And Tom Hardy is just fantastic in it. Look at his eyes when he's acting. It's really it's well done. Rick looks like he's losing his damn mind. Period. I mean, the dragon of chaos is about to consume him. That's where we're at with all this. and he'll fall victim like those before him and become the malevolent tyrant. That is where Rick is at this point. We're right back to almost square one, right before the prison. We're asking ourselves again, is Rick about to lose it all here? Is he about to fall back and lose everything that all the ground that he's gained as a leader? And that his strength, his sanity, it's all on the line right here. He's at a tipping point. He can't take it anymore. And so, and at this point, the group is in limbo. They're just hanging out at the church and trying to figure out their next plan. Abraham, he's trying to convince everyone to take the church bus that's there and go to Washington, D.C. and complete their mission. Yeah, that's coming up again too. The freaking ridiculous mission to Washington, D.C. The group sets off for food at a local food bank that Gabriel's church headed up. And there we find out a little bit of Gabriel's rocky past. And unfortunately, Bob gets bit. We don't know that yet, but he does. He doesn't tell anyone. But instead, later on, he wanders off, I guess to just wander off and die. I don't know really why he was doing that. But then gets apprehended by Garrett and the few survivors of Terminus. From there, Bob awakens to them eating his leg. Oh my goodness, as if the show couldn't get any weirder or nastier. And it goes through this whole kind of scene of in and out. And Garrett's just being like the typical bad guy. He's like a Bond villain. He's just explaining to him his plan and everything about it. I don't know. It's very kind of cliche, explaining why we are the way we are and everything. But it works out. It's fine. It's a good scene. And eventually Bob kind of comes to and starts laughing, and he tells them that they screwed up because they're eating tainted meat. And that's when we find out Bob was bitten. He reveals the bite on his shoulder, and it's like, oh no, not Bob. Oh no, Bob's gonna die. Oh crap. This is where I go back to, I mean, yeah, I guess it was upsetting to see Bob was going to be off the show, because I started to really like Bob. I actually liked Bob. I thought he was a great character. I thought he was underused a lot. I thought he could have had a much longer future in the show, in my personal opinion. But I did enjoy this scene where he laughs at them for eating his infected flesh. I thought that was pretty cool. It's kind of like, haha, in your face. It's like spitting. It's like when the guy gets punched, when he's being interrogated by like the bad guy. He's tied up, and the bad guy punches him in the face, and he kind of like kicks his head back, and then he leans back and then spits the blood in the bad guy's face and laughs at him. It's like, that's the best thing ever, right? Because everybody wants to be that guy who's just like, yeah, you can punch me in the face all you want, and I'm just gonna spit in your, I'm gonna spit my blood right back at you and laugh because you can't do nothing to break me. Everybody wants to be that guy. The reality is most of us would probably crack like a $2 egg. Anyway, we also got to learn just again how evil Garrett really is. Dude's a mess. And sorry, I don't care if someone raped your mom. You don't start eating people. I'm going to go right back to that again. I'm going to beat on that drum for a while. So I don't care what you explain to Bob. I don't care what you try to justify or whatever. Nobody cares. You're a malevolent, evil human being. You're twisted in the mind, and truth be told, there's no help for you except a bullet to the head. At the very least, it's not, again, not justifiable reason to do any of those things, which is what he was trying to tell us. So anyway, Garrett and his group end up getting slaughtered brutally by Rick. I'm kind of moving forward quickly. And the others and Gabriel, anyway, Garrett and his group end up getting slaughtered brutally by Rick and the others in Gabriel's church. This freaks out a lot of people out, especially Gabriel. He didn't like what he saw. He goes, this is the house of God. And then Maggie's like, not anymore, it ain't. And with, well, let's face it. I think it stopped being a house of God when we found out what Gabriel did to his people. Maybe it was never even a house of the Lord because of what you did, to your own group of people, the people that look to you for leadership and security and safety. And that's the official end of Terminus right there. Boom, all done. Again, that's a summary at best, but truth be told, the way the seasons are being written right now and the way they're going, and I forgot how much they were like this, just how much plays out in these seasons. This special would be better suited for and be more episodic, like where I'm literally looking at every episode of each season and going each week when the episode airs, talking about it instead of doing like the entire season in one episode. It would be much better to do it that way, but we're a little too far past that now. So, but be sure to check up on my Last of Us reviews. I plan on doing a quick summarization of The Last of Us too. I have some thoughts about that show. So look for that. I might try to do that later this week. But anyway, moving on. From here, we move on to Beth's story, because that's what we all were asking for. We find out what happened to her and where she went. She ends up back in Atlanta, of all places, with a group of police officers and a doctor who are taking people in at Grady Hospital and trying to kind of start up a community. They're being led by a female police officer who really doesn't have it all together. You kind of learn that as the show progresses on. She's a bit of a control freak. She's manipulated, and she's happy to gaslight anyone there to maintain her power. Her idea is that they need to establish some sort of community, and so that way they have something really great when whoever comes back to get them. When the world comes back to get us, we'll be ready. We'll have this great community. We'll have the rules, the laws, and the organization, and everything will be great. And we could just slip right back into the way things were before. This is a woman that is completely out of touch with reality, because I don't think she ever really left that hospital very much, at least not lately. Beth is all too kind enough to tell her, like, you're losing your damn mind. Nobody's coming. Like, this world's gone. And Beth is right. The world is gone. There's nobody coming. As far as we know, and as anybody else knows, and from what we've seen, the world's gone. There's no government. There's no organization. There's nothing. It's gone. And so and of course, this lady attempts to gaslight Beth frequently, but Beth just kind of goes along with it and knows she's full of shit. And during all this, we get to meet Noah. And Noah seems to be a great guy. He's harmless for the most part. And he tries to help Beth escape with him. He gets away, unfortunately, but Beth does not. She gets rounded back up, but no worries. This just garners more respect from the leader. Dodge that bullet, Beth. Because I'm thinking you're going to get Beth got slapped across the face because they couldn't save somebody. Like, Beth had nothing to do with this person dying. And like, the woman turned around. I can't remember her name. The female cop leader lady turns around and just smacks the crap out of her for no reason. It's like, what the hell was that? Anyway, Beth tries to escape. And she just pulled, I learned that you're stronger than I realized. And now I have a lot of respect for you. It's like, that doesn't even line up with what you obviously don't think she's smart. You may think she's strong, but you think you can manipulate her, because obviously if you thought she was as strong as you realized, you would have not let her back in there, because you would be in fear that she would overthrow you, because this woman has a power issue. So she's been holding on to it like with a clenched fist. So I don't know why she would let her back in and be like, oh, no worries. I just have a whole lot of respect for you now because you're so strong. It's like, okay, whatever. That doesn't really line up with your character and what your character would normally do in this situation. Because really, you should absolutely smack the shit out of her or beat her or punish her, but you don't. You punished Noah. You've punished these other people that tried to escape, but you don't punish Beth. Needless to say, I'm not a massive fan of these characters, if you can't tell, or this part of the season. I'm like, this part of the season's dumb. First of all, they're operating power-hungry hospital equipment off batteries in a city that was so overrun that Rick's group, wouldn't dare go back in unless absolutely necessary. And these guys are driving cop cars around like it's no big deal. Years after the incident at that, what's charging those batteries, by the way? And I've also said this, and I will touch on this a lot more probably later on in future season specials. Where the hell are they getting all the gas for these cars? Gas has a shelf life. If you don't know that, it does. In fact, it becomes less combustible over time to the point where it's not going to really do anything. And it's now what? We have to assume, judging by Carl's age, Judith's age, they're probably 3-4 years into this. Each season's probably a year now, so they're probably 5 years into the apocalypse at this point. Because Carl's he ain't a child anymore. He's much older. So what's charging these batteries? Where are they finding these batteries that have juice? And where are they getting all this gas to drive around and rescue people in cop cars? And not to mention, all the cops are just bad guys. Like, they're the cliche power hungry, do whatever they want attitude. They're literally like these police officers act like the left wing of this country tells you police officers act. That's literally how they act in this show. It's like, well, cops are all malevolent, bad individuals who just do what they want, shoot whoever they want. They don't care. They're above the law because they are the law. That's what we always hear all the time. No justice, no peace, man. And these cops are like, they act just like that. It's like, what? Not to mention all the, I don't know. The idea that this place manages to run at all is mind-boggling to me. Because, we are made to believe that these cops just rape women, beat men, take advantage of those that who they save, with no uprising, no disorder, no pushback. Societies in general are a very fragile thing. Society today in this country is a very fragile thing, even with all the things that we have. Especially small communities trying to survive in an apocalypse. There should have been a mutiny long ago, especially with how easily Beth gets in there and starts to kind of turn things around. Like she kind of starts flipping the tables in that place. If Beth can do that, let's face it, who's Beth? Beth is a nobody character. She's weak. She's just kind of there. She's never really had her own story except for at the farm where she tries to kill herself, which shows that she's not a strong character. She's very maternal, very agreeable. She's just kind of there. And yet this woman who's not very threatening, who you wouldn't say is the strongest character in the show, is going into this community and she's killing cops, right? She's fighting off cops and stuff and flipping tables and causing disorder. Why was this not done sooner? You can't possibly tell me that all the orderlies in that place wouldn't have been like, look, we need to band together and take these people out. The doctor's, he's good. This person's good. We need to take these people out because we've had enough. We're not going to be abused. We're not allowed to leave. Why? They're not allowed to go anywhere. They can't leave because they get pulled right back in. Why the hell did the woman who kills herself in the leader's office, this part doesn't even make sense to me. Why in the world would she kill herself and leave her body there in the office? Why didn't she just hide there and take her out? Or take out the cop that was raping her, for that matter? Could have very easily, lured him into a closet and put the moves on him and made him think he was going to get lucky, and then bam, got him. I get you tried to escape and you couldn't. So the next logical step is just to off yourself as some message to the cops. What is it? That they don't care. They're just going to throw you down that elevator shaft. There's no message to be sent there. But whatever. That's why that whole portion is just filler. It really was. It was really just filler for the season. We got a lot of nothing and no payoff for that entire. How many episodes was that? Like 2 episodes, I think it ended up being, or 3 episodes it spread out across. Nothing. Noah ends up being the only survivor. Beth needlessly tries to kill the female police officer. Didn't have to, but she does, and she gets shot in the head. So Beth gets killed off. I don't know if I would have written it that way, but that's fine. I think I would have kept Beth around a little bit longer. Especially because I think if there's one positive thing to all that is it did amplify Beth's character a little bit more, but not a whole lot, because even then I'm like, I don't care about this character. I never have. She's never been interesting. There's not a whole lot. The only interesting thing, the only reason why we care is because it's Maggie's sister. The story overall in there, it's not interesting, and it adds nothing to the overall plot of the season at all. And the thing too is Noah, love him or hate him, but Noah isn't going to be a character the show invests in. So we go through all that just to have a B-list, not even a B-list character in my opinion, a C-list character just to kill off later on. It's like you scratch your head and go, what were they thinking with all this? I understand the idea of it. It's actually I like the idea of finding this group in Atlanta that's at Grady doing all these things. Sure, that's fine. But that literally could have been, you could have dedicated the rest of the season to that if you would have written it differently. You could have made that group far more interesting, not stereotypical. Don't make the cops these stereotypical bad guys that everyone thinks cops are, at least everybody on the left. You could tell like some liberal who hates cops wrote wrote up these characters, because it's not believable. People think often that people at the top got there because of malevolence. But the reality is no one stays a leader for very long when they're evil. They just don't. You either have to, if you're an evil dictator, you have to rule with an iron fist and keep your head over both of your shoulders looking behind you, because you're not going to last very long. Societies that last are led by leaders who that do not lead like a dictator. And that's what's going on inside this whole entire facility for what looks like forever, because these cops have been there since the beginning. So you're telling me that this place is growing when these guys are all pretty bad dudes? It's not believable. Not at all. Because here's the thing. At a certain point, you're going to go, I've had enough of this shit, and I'm going to fight back. I don't care. I can't leave. I certainly am not going to kill myself. That doesn't make any damn sense. So it's horribly written. It could have been executed so much better. It had the potential to be a really great part in the story, but it ended up just being a big nothing burger. I'd rather have had Beth live than Noah in this situation. Like I said earlier, I think Beth was a far more developed character and more interesting than Noah when you compare the two. She was kind of built up a lot last season when she was lost with Darrel. That helped her character a lot, get a little bit of more development. And then, of course, the last couple of scenes in the hospital helped a little bit more. I'm not mad that she was killed off. It's okay. I mean, it helped kind of set the stage later on, but the whole hospital and cop situation just felt like a waste of time. Nothing of real substance. And we got nothing out of it, like I said before. And, we get to see Rick lose it more. He kind of shoots that cop and tells him to shut up. Shut up. Cop's just kind of like pleading with him, and he just pops him and says, shut up. Rick's in full monster mode. Rick has gone full Shane. Period. Full stop. He is now Shane 2.0 at this point. So Beth dies and Noah's with the group. Oh boy. And during all this, we get cutaways to Glenn, Maggie, Rosita, Eugene, and Abraham. They're all set off to get Eugene to Washington, D.C. And at a certain point, the mission becomes helpless when they come across a massive horde of zombies that is blocking their path. Abraham insists that they push through it while others are saying it's not safe, it's not worth it. And eventually this causes Eugene to crack and fess up that he's full of it. And then Abraham promptly beats his ass and almost kills him. And now, wow, we are so shocked. Eugene was lying. If there's anything I hate more than the hospital scene, it's this crap right here. This entire situation makes every character in The Walking Dead look like complete incompetent idiots. It also makes the viewer look like a complete incompetent idiot. Because at first it's just Abraham being made to look dumb. Just a dumb soldier following orders blindly because, that's what we all do. We're just useful idiots. That's what soldiers are. That's what the left thinks of I'm telling you, the writers of this show, it is, you can tell somebody else is writing this program because it's so stereotypical. That's the problem. We're getting into stereotypes with characters in situations. And it's like, ugh, it's not good. And Abraham's made to look like a useful idiot. And then soon after, all the characters believe this nonsense. But after, soon after all that, we start to see all the characters believe this freaking nonsense. And I'm sorry, but the writers did a horrible job trying to get Glenn to try to pry out any information, because that's what we eventually kind of start to see is Glenn starts asking questions. And I kind of went back and said, if anyone could poke holes in it, it would be Rick and his group because of what they experienced at the CDC. But the piss poor writing and the piss poor job here of the scene playing out where Eugene, because look, Glenn's trying to pry out the information. He's like, you need to tell me what the plan actually is. I need to know what the real plan is. I don't want to hear this classified nonsense, which is a fair reaction. Because it's like, dude, classified from who? Nobody's going to jail. Everyone's dead. So what do you know? Because if I'm going to go all the way to Washington, D.C., I want to know what your plan is. And of course, we get something really freaking stupid because Eugene's response was everything except a very good one. He never really outlines a real plan. And if anything, it sounds more like he wants to nuke the walkers more than anything else. He's fight fire with fire. That's what he says. Just fights fire with fire. He doesn't really give you a true example of a real plan. And maybe it was written that way because we needed to know that this guy's probably full of it. But the problem is it just makes everybody else look stupid. I just hate it. It's terrible. It didn't need to be in the script. Eugene's lie would have been better suited to say something like, he used to work at the Genome Project. Again, it's okay that Eugene lied. That's fine because it kind of helped save his life at the moment. But his lie would have been better off, in my opinion. I would have wrote it like maybe something like this, where he works for the Human Genome Project and was based here in Georgia with his team when this whole thing kicked off. He lost communication with the DC headquarters, the main headquarters. When the place fell to the dead, but they have the facilities in DC and wherewithal to keep people safe, so we need to go there. They will have the cure and the infrastructure to keep us safe. Boom. That's more of a believable lie. And it doesn't require any explanation. No stupid, it's confidential. Can't tell you. If Joe Biden was here, he'd probably tell you. He'd probably leave the document on the floor so you would be able to read it. But it's dumb. It's stupid. But anyway, I guess that's me being picky. But again, it just makes the characters look stupid. It makes Glenn, Maggie, Rick, and all of them just come across as really dumb. And I hate that. And it kind of makes me feel like I'm stupid. Like, am I supposed to believe this? Because I can't believe this. This is corny. Even if it was real and he was like the part of the Human Genome Project and actually had a cure, it's still kind of cheesy and unbelievable and not very good. So anyway, needless to say, they head back to the church, meet up with the group and head to Atlanta to get Beth because they find out Beth is alive. But then Maggie finds out that Beth didn't make it and now all is lost. The group decides to take Noah to his family, and I believe it's in Virginia, where his family is. It's definitely near DC, so it's probably in Virginia, where he last heard they had a community with a place that was safe. So that's where he wants to go. And they're going to do it for Beth, I guess. I don't freaking know. Stupid. Anyway, well, it's gone, of course, and Noah's family is dead. Tyrese decides to watch Noah as the others kind of look around and explore and find out what happened, find if they can make do here or what. And then Noah gets a wild hair to go to his house. Tyrese, being the pushover that he is, follows after him. And sadly, this is where Tyrese dies. We do get to go through a really nice scene, though, with all the old characters popping up during his hallucinations, which was pretty neat. Got the governor again, such a great villain. The two little girls, Bob's there, and that guy that was in the shack with him. And they're all just kind of continuing what they were talking about before they died, basically. Except for the girls. They're kind of like, it's okay now. Everything's fine. But so it was a kind of an interesting scene. And then the radio's also playing in the background, kind of telling you what happened there, which is kind of a weird thing. Don't know why Tyrese would hallucinate the radio explaining exactly what happened in that neighborhood, but whatever. How would he know? A hallucination is just your brain presenting something, it's projecting something. So he would have to have known that this place was taken over by people who butchered people or whatever, wolves rather. Anyway, I digress. This show's written, this season's written terribly, guys. The first part, the Terminus folks, that's good. From there, it just starts to go down. Now, I will say it gets a little bit better with Alexandria. So I don't know if it's just different writers for different episodes, and that's the problem. But this whole middle section of the season is just god awful. So yeah, Tyrese dies. Like I said before, Tyrese was, like I said earlier, and I kind of alluded to it, there was foreshadowing. Tyrese was not cut out for the new world. You know, he did not adapt. He didn't find his inner monster until it was too late. He was always kind of wrestling with that. He was always trying to, he didn't have the ability to make the tough calls and the tough decisions, which is why that one guy was still alive and could come back and and help Garrett get Bob. And so eventually the new world would get him. It got him. And it did here. Rick tries to save him, but it doesn't work. And so with nothing else to do now, and 2 people lost, Beth and Tyrese, the group is pretty broken emotionally, physically. The group decides to head to DC anyway in hopes that there may be something there after all. Maybe Eugene's onto something. Maybe they do have the infrastructure, something there to help them survive. So they go as far as they can until their cars break down or run out of gas. And then from here, they just kind of wander, barely making it. Many of them are sad about the death of Beth or Tyrese and Bob, for that matter. I didn't mention him. Bob's dead too at this point, so everyone's kind of messed up. They lost 3 people. And clinging on to what little hope they have left. I mean, it's not a whole lot. And what we see is a group much like Rick, just kind of barely hanging on. And so they're wandering through the heat, not able to find water. We see like a whole stream of frogs that are dead because it's basically like a drought. And they don't look like they're going to make it. They're stumbling through. No water, no food. But alas, after a few days of wandering in the heat, rainfall finally comes, but in the form of a dangerous storm. It's like a sick joke. The cruel world quenches their thirst, but does it with a severe storm. It's like a backhanded compliment. So Darrel leads them to shelter that he found, and they hunker down while the rainfall comes and the thunder rolls over that area. And so later that evening, the storm gets actually quite worse, and Darrel's just kind of pacing. He can't sleep because he's upset over Beth. And he looks out the front doors of this barn and sees a horde of zombies approaching. And not before long, he starts holding the door back. Then Sasha helps, and then not before long, the whole group is pushing against the horde, trying to keep them out. The significance of this scene can't be understated. It's a giant metaphor for their situation. They're caught in a storm, trying to keep what is the chaotic world, outside world, out from the barn. And you see this play out with the cinematography. I love this scene. I think it was really well executed and what it represents. That's the thing about this show is so much of it's like just cheesy and bad. And then you have scenes like this where it's like, this is really good. I like the kind of what they're portraying here and what it represents. And then you cut to the morning. All is calm. It's quiet. Kind of asking yourself, what happened to all those walkers? And Maggie walks out with Sasha, and you see the sunrise in the distance and the dead spread about covered in toppled trees. So a tornado came right through there and wiped out the walkers and took down a bunch of trees. And you wonder why the barn is still standing. It's almost like they have someone looking out for them. And so the sunshine in the scene kind of represents, the sunshine and the calm of this scene represents a new beginning. That's what sunrises represent in terms of imagery, which is what the group is about to embark on. It's a new beginning because as Maggie and Sasha sit there and look at the sunrise, a person appears. Now, this is where we really get to see Rick and all his craziness. The next several episodes will show just how far gone the group was getting, and maybe too far gone for some. Rick does not trust the stranger one bit, who claims to have a community that's safe and a place for them to all live. And naturally, he doesn't. I mean, I know I wouldn't. They were betrayed and almost killed by Terminus, and they've been really running into nothing but bad characters for quite a while now. And so they devise a plan to find out, and one that would protect the group as much as possible. So they kind of devise a plan to see if this guy's really telling the truth, if he's really who he says he is, or if he's just luring them into a trap. And so they kind of go off script and off Aaron's script. This is the gentleman they found. And so interesting thing to note is during all this, we do see a slight divide in the group. Many are hesitant to go, like Rick, or even trust Aaron, the man that found them, while others are ready to go and follow him, hopeful that he's telling the truth. They're just ready to get up and go. Let's go right now. He says he's got a community with food, water, and shelter. Let's go. But Rick's like, not so fast. I don't trust this dude. And again, for good reason. And both sides are right here. You know what I mean? They need hope. They need something to fall back on to survive. But however, most people have not been very trustworthy. So neither a person's wrong. It's just like, what do you do? What's the right move? Would you trust Aaron? I don't know. With everything you've been through. Eventually, Rick's little plan to kind of get to what's called Alexandria fails and almost gets Rick and Aaron killed. They see a flare go up in the distance and they follow it, finding the others held up in a building with his lover. And so Aaron is worried about him because his lover broke his ankle. Oh. And so he refuses to move anymore that night. But this also shows Rick and the others that Aaron may just be telling the truth about his community, because Aaron seems like he's a pretty good guy. And so, cut to it, they finally arrived at Alexandria. They can hear kids playing on the other side of the walls, and all seems pretty well. Michonne smiles at Rick. Rick kind of has like this, okay, this might be what he says it is. Rick's still very apprehensive. And so they get there. They kind of get in. They get put in their home. They each get their own house, which is even crazier. But the group is finding it very difficult to settle in. And so the next episodes will be all about that. First, trying to see if they can even make sense of it all and see if this place really is friendly, if it's true to what they say. When they do that, then they got to figure out how they fit in, or if they can handle the peace and the calm. I mean, after all, have never experienced a place like this. You know, this place is different. This is this is more unique than the prison. Even in Woodbury didn't have anything like this, which is they have running water, electricity, plenty of food, actual houses with beds in them and furniture, clean clothes. It's almost like the outside world doesn't even exist anymore. It's like the old world. Inside these 4 gated walls is the old world. Wow. Almost too good to be true. And so this is a huge problem because Rick and his group have a serious case of PTSD. And what I love so much about these episodes is it outlines very well how trauma affects people differently. You have someone like Sasha, for instance. She's like a soldier back from the war front. She's home now in peace, but you know, the soldier's mind is still at war. You know, he should be settling in, taking comfort in his bed and his food and his family with that peace, but instead it's just not there. He can't understand it or how to deal with it. He can't turn off being a warrior. And we see that so often. And then you have someone like Michonne who's ready to just hang up the sword, literally. She puts her sword up over the mantle. She's done. And she's ready to settle in. She's coping just fine and getting used to this place. And this is what you see with soldiers in PTSD. It's so often for like 4 men from the same platoon come back and each will be in a very different headspace, react differently to being home. And there's no real rhyme or reason as to maybe why. You know, psychologists have probably got a little bit more of an answer now, depending on their personality. But that's the problem, is you can't treat PTSD with a blanket treatment. Everybody's different. Everybody has different experiences. It goes through different things. And Sasha, she has to probably be the worst of them all. I mean, she's actually wandering off to go hunt the dead and get involved in it. It's sad, really, because this is a moment. This moment really is the only moment of peace anyone in this group is going to get. So these few episodes, up until the very last episode, that is going to be the only real peace this group has. So they may have found paradise, but there's no peace in paradise. Not in the new world. The new world, it's coming. And so, like I said, Alexandria represents the last bit of the old world, and in a very, very extreme way. And these people are probably more naive than Rick's group was during the first season. That's how naive these people are. And I mean, that's something to really think about. They have absolutely no idea what the new world is. None. They don't know. They think they know. Much like someone watching the news program about another country and its issues. You think you know, but you really don't. You'd have to go there and find out to know the truth, to know the full extent of it. These people would have to leave those gates and live in that world to really know what the new world's like. They have no idea. And Rick, he's been in that world. He knows the reality. He understands how vulnerable that place really is. But he also understands how precious of a place it is, how much it needs to be protected, how much the idea of Alexandria is a good idea, but people need to realize and wake up, you're not safe. And these other folks are going, what are you talking about? We've been safe. We've been thriving here. We have not had any problems. You don't know. You're just scared. You're dealing with emotional stress. You need to relax. And so during all this, the group has infighting with others in Alexandria, naturally. And then this isn't helped when Gabriel gets a wild hair and decides to tell their leader that the group is actually a bunch of really bad people who have done awful things and don't deserve this place. Again, this is where this show can go off the rails for me. I don't understand this scene. I don't understand why Gabriel would do this. Not that it doesn't add some tension between the two groups, because it certainly does, but it doesn't make sense that Gabriel would say this. It doesn't make sense that he would do this. He knows how bad the outside world is. He's been in it. He's seen it. And the group has rescued him on several occasions. They saved his life like twice. Maybe he's subconsciously mad that the group has what it takes to protect their own and he doesn't, which is why his entire congregation was killed in the event. He is a coward. There's no doubt about that. And because of that, people have died, and he's pretty torn up over it. He feels he's being punished by God or will be punished by God for his behavior. So, maybe that's what it boils down to. He furthers his cowardice too by going to the leader of Alexandria and telling her the group is evil and shouldn't be there. That's a very cowardly kind of backstabbing act to do. It just shows you that this guy's not really a good person. Maybe he's certainly not. He's not how you'd expect a pastor or a priest, rather, for that matter, to act. Or maybe that is how priests act. I don't know. Glen learns. Excuse me. But before I lose that point, it just seems off and out of place for me, for him to go off and do that. I still just don't understand. And there's really nothing comes from that other than it does add some tension. But I also don't understand the reaction of the lady who runs Alexandria, because it's like she just flips. Like the moment that Gabriel tells her this, it's like she turns into a completely different character. And in fact, when you look at her, she goes from having a very happy looking face to almost like a menacing looking face, of like a hardened face, an angry looking face, where she's convinced that this guy's telling the truth and she let in some really bad people. But I'm like, you're supposed to be the one that's really good at reading folks. You've interviewed all these people. You've given them all jobs. They're all fitting in pretty well. Why would you suddenly completely 180 your opinion based off of one guy and what he says without following up on it? That's how it felt. Now, again, she does kind of follow up on it, but it just really felt like that really changed her mind. Like, well, maybe we do need to kick these people out. And of course, Maggie hears all this too in the background. So you think, well, Maggie's going to confront Gabriel about it. It just seemed off, out of place. It just didn't seem to make sense. I'm like, why is this even in the script? It doesn't add to it. Doesn't really help. You could easily add the tension in another way that's more believable, because not long after, Rick is going to do something really stupid, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second. But Glen, he learns the hard way that Alexandria is not prepared to take on this new world, as they sadly lose Noah because of their cowardice. Yeah, Noah dies in the most extreme way possible. It was a brutal death. About the only thing he lends to the entire show, sadly. Again, all this crap at the hospital, and just for him to be brutally killed by zombies, it's, again, a waste of a character and our time. But that's what this season's done. And then Rick, as I spoke, what I was about to alluding to a second ago, Rick eventually gets involved with a woman and her abusive husband, because he's now the constable. He's the police officer. So he's getting involved with a domestic violence dispute, which leads to a brawl out in the streets, and Rick spouting off his mouth about how the community isn't safe and they're kind of all weak and blah, blah, blah. And he ain't going to let this place fall. He's going to do whatever it takes, even if that means kicking out some of your weak people. So this is pretty intense. And of course, this doesn't help his group's case after what Gabriel said. So, maybe that's the whole plan. But again, the Gabriel going to her and saying that is just, to me, off character. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand why he would say that, but he did. Whatever. It's also very interesting to note in this scene how much Rick is acting like Shane, full Shane mode, and how I said in episode 2, or excuse me, episode 2 of this special, that everyone will eventually be Shane to a degree. I said it in episode 2. I said everyone is going to end up becoming Shane. They don't like Shane right now, and they're all worried about him, but they all will become Shane. And Rick goes full send here for sure. See, Shane was never really a bad guy. He was right. He was the right one. He was just too early. And the problem for Shane is he couldn't get control over himself. So what about Rick? Will he get control of himself? After all, Rick has lost his moral compass, something I spoke about in the last season. Then that moral compass was Herschel. We're starting to see people like Michonne appeal to Rick, but it's not the same. These other people in the group do not have the same appeal that Herschel did with Rick. Even Rick goes behind many of the group's group's back to sneak out guns just in case. Even though the other group is assuming that they're going to give this place a shot, Rick is making contingencies. It's so much a Shane move. That's what Shane would have done all day. Rick has to have a moral compass or he will lose his way. So who's going to step up and be that moral compass? We may find out. And so he's locked up at this point. They locked him up in a house, and the husband who's abusive, he's in a different home, separated from his wife. And so the community decides to meet up, decide if Rick and the group should be allowed to stay. Prior to this, Gabriel wanders out to die. But again, being a coward, can't go through with it. And he comes back and doesn't close the gate properly behind him, which allows walkers to get in. Rick conveniently discovers this and is now searching for them while the community is deciding his fate. He manages to kill them and bring one of them to the meeting to expose just how vulnerable they really are. And he's covered in blood and looks insane, which is probably, again, it's really hard to convince a group of people when you're covered in blood and you've got crazy eyes. Another thing to note here, I said earlier, when Rick got to Alexandria, he shaved and he got a haircut. And again, this is a kind of like representative of a new beginning. He kind of looked young again. His eyes weren't crazy looking. He looked more like Rick in season 1, right? So it's almost like, wow, Rick is being renewed. He's almost like old Rick. Look, he's got a sheriff's outfit on, or a police officer's outfit on now. So it's almost like Rick is being reborn into old Rick. And yet there's another version of Rick fighting him. And the interesting thing to point out in this scene where he brings the walker body to the community meeting to show how unsafe they are, Rick's stubble is back and his crazy eyes are back and he's covered in blood. So he looks insane again. So what we're seeing in this later half of this season is you're seeing old Rick and new Rick kind of colliding with each other and fighting, because Rick wants to trust Alexandria. Rick wants his kid to have a house to grow up in and friends, and he wants everyone to be safe. But there's old Rick who's not trustworthy, who's been through the hell and the storm and knows just how vulnerable people can be in this new world. And those two are colliding right now. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. Yeah. And so he drops off the zombie and everyone's like, oh my gosh. And then very promptly after that, the abusive husband shows up with Michonne's sword, yelling that Rick is the problem and he's not one of them and blah, blah, blah. He's very clearly drunk or something. And the leader of Alexandria's husband tries to kind of say, hey man, just calm down. Let's talk about it. And the abusive husband pushes him off and accidentally cuts the leader's husband's throat and kills him. Rick looks on when the leader tells him to do it, and he shoots the abusive husband, killing him, only to see Darrel, Aaron, and by the way, Morgan, looking on in surprise and maybe even a little bit horror. And so that's how season 5 ends. And that's the basic summary of season 5. There's a lot more to the show, a lot of in between and all that. These seasons would be better suited episode by episode, but we can't do that. What a roller coaster ride that was. I mean, we got introduced to new characters, lost some existing ones. Something to point out too at this point, there's only 5 from the original group left. So only 5 folks from season 1 are still here. There's Rick, Carl, Darrel, and Carol. Darrel and Carol. Everyone else is dead. Now Morgan is still alive too, but he wasn't really with the original group at the quarry. I'm talking about the original group that's been through all hell and back. Out of everyone that was there, there's only 5 left. So, only the strong survive, and even then either live long enough to die a hero or become the villain. So we'll see how this plays out, especially with Rick, because Rick is losing it. He has no more compass anymore. No one there to kind of be the angel on his shoulder saying, whoa, dude, maybe you need to think about this. That was Herschel. Right now, he's only got a devil on his shoulder, and he's got to be the angel, and I don't know if he's capable of doing that. I didn't hate this season, but there was a lot to love, or a lot left to love, rather. Like I spoke about earlier, I didn't like the hospital scene. I didn't like the police officer characters. I thought it was really poorly written. It was a waste of time. It brought a whole lot of nothing, no payoff, no nothing. Left us with one less character who was Beth. Gave us another character that only lasted until the end of the season, who could have been something. They could have developed him, but they didn't. But one thing you will see, and one thing you have to notice too about this season, which is very interesting, it kind of goes with what I keep saying, which is people like Tyrese, for instance, will not make it in the new world. People who save babies aren't the ones who make it. That's true. One of the three things that Tyrese, Beth, and Noah all have in common is they all had really good hearts. They had big hearts. They were nice people. They cared. And they were willing to do the right thing. That's why Noah sacrificed himself to save Glen. It was a heroic thing. But people like that don't survive in this new world. So how is it this group is going to move forward and maintain their sanity? Maybe they don't. Or maybe they just die. So on that note, folks, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of season 5. I thought it was, again, it was okay. It wasn't the best. Wasn't the worst. I'm starting to see a trend in the writing. I'm starting to see a lot of filler and a lot of what the hell were they thinking when they wrote that? But I'm remaining hopeful. But I do know where we're going because, like I said, I have seen at least the next season. I don't remember how far into this I got. I know we got past Negan. So, yeah. Hold on to your butts because here we go. We're going into the second half of The Walking Dead. And I'm not so sure I'm as confident in it as I am in the first half of The Walking Dead. So on that note, folks, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it as always. If you love the show, tell a friend. That would make me feel amazing to know that you're sharing the show and telling people about it. You can rate and review us on Apple iTunes podcasts, Apple Podcasts, that is, Spotify, and other areas where you get your podcasts, including Google. It's easy to do. It doesn't cost you any money. Just a little bit of your time. Just go in there, leave a 5-star review and a comment if you like, and share it. It helps tremendously. It would mean the world to me if you did that. Thank you so much. And if you have opinions about season 5, maybe it's something you didn't like, maybe you did like the police officers, you can hit me up at davidking.therant@gmail.com. You can also hit me up at The Rant with David King on Facebook. You can hit me up at The Real DM King on Twitter. You can also hit me up on Instagram with The Rant with David King. I'm all there. You want to reach out to me, you can email me, comment, leave me a post, whatever. I will respond. I'd like to know what you thought about season 5. And on that note, folks, thank you so much and have a great day. We'll catch you later this week. I will do an update on The Last of Us for sure. I want to talk about that. I got some other things to talk about. A lot going on in the news, so stay tuned. Thank you so much and have a great night. See ya.